are now locked into the Live with Brandon Blakney podcast. Here is your host, Brandon Blakney.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Brandon Blakney, aka Brandon Lee TV, back at it again, joined by Miss Candace Cooper. That's Candace with the A, everybody. Just in case you didn't know. Locked on ACC podcast. Candace, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Brandon, thanks so much for having me. One, I love the intro. That beat is kind of hard. I need to get on my crew to make sure we do ours do over. Okay, I like this is quality.
Hey, I appreciate it. You know, we gotta come correct. We gotta come correct with the intro, the guests, and everything.
Absolutely.
And a thing that I love to do on my show is just kind of give people their flowers and give people a chance to kind of tell their background. So first off, love your coverage. Just watch the ACC preview that you and your co-host did. Very, very in-depth stuff. So we'll definitely get everybody to follow you after the show. But just give us a little bit of background on how you got involved with sports, developed your love, and turned it into a career.
Yeah, 100%. Long story, long winding road that is not linear by any means, but I swam at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I swam 4 years and then took some time away to work kind of that corporate lifestyle and quickly learned that government 9 to 5 is not for me. The day-to-day working 30 years, like my parents are both government workers, right? So they put in their 30 years, retired. So I was like, thought that was gonna be my calling. But thankfully they worked so hard that they opened doors to allow me to explore other options. And
Facts.
I'm so glad I did, because being behind a desk, just pushing papers was never gonna be my ministry. And so I took time to go to Wake Forest and got my business degree, and then ended up training for Olympic trials for 2 years after that. Once I retired from Olympic trials, kind of didn't know where I was going to go. Started throwing things at the wall, seeing what would stick. Went into teaching, did swim coaching, ultimately landed on radio broadcast with a local show called The Sports Shop with Reese and K Mac. They gave me my first shot Tuesday, 3-hour episode. Once a week, and just kind of took off from there. Got my own podcast, Out of My League, with Brendan Whitted, who is my forever guy in terms of just helping me be comfortable on air and all the things. And once our podcast was one time a week, $25 a week, like very humble beginnings, 1,000%. And so we did one episode. It would air on Saturday mornings, and it was just like us grinding, producing ourselves, figuring out how to work the boards and all of that fun stuff. And then after that, I got my first full-time gig at called All the Above. It was a national show in Houston, Texas. And then 90 days in, the world stopped. There was no sports. And my heart was crushed because it was about 6 years worth of work, and thinking that I had made it. Because, national stage is where everyone wants to be, and all the things. And so I took a little turn, a little spiral, had to do a little pandemic pivot, use that business degree, brush it off, figure out how to make some transferable skills, make some things shake. I was taking 15-minute calls on LinkedIn, just trying to, meet, network, anyone who would hire me, anything I could do. Decided to get into the agency world and get into production. I work currently at Under Armour as the lead producer for all of their social media marketing, and then do Locked On. So I get to have best of both worlds. In 2020, David Locke was gracious enough to offer me Locked On Tar Heels podcast. And then I kind of graduated to Locked On ACC, covering all 14 institutions. And me and my co-host, Kenton Gibbs, we host it every single day on part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And we now have YouTube. So got the 1,000 subs, and we're just rolling ever since.
Hey, it's a race to 1,000. Get that thing monetized.
Okay. Listen, you don't know how I was begging and pleading, we got 10 more subs left, like all those kinds of things. But once you hit the 1K, 2K is even better. So it's always a chase, right?
No, I feel you. I'm currently there now. As my followers know, I have a background. I was a sports anchor for a while. I've done the TV thing, and I'm kind of taking a break from that and doing the YouTube thing and, doing this podcast and stuff. But I actually started in writing and radio. So I love hearing that from you.
Yeah.
What was your experience like? I mean, radio it's a grind, but I love the freedom of it.
Yeah, I love radio because, as a woman, you have to respect what I say because you can't see me, right? For what, TV, appearance is everything. It's all about aesthetics. But when it come to radio, like I had to make sure I was sharp in what I knew, because there was going to be the Billy Bob caller who calls in and says Candace doesn't know anything. You get one stat wrong and it's like, she doesn't know sports, right? So it really helped me fine tune my like knowledge of the game, and just, okay, I'm more of an eye test girl than an X and O's, because I wasn't physically having my hand in the dirt. But I can tell you when a boy got burnt now. You know what I'm saying? Like I can show from my own eyes when someone has some talent. You see it, you've been in it long enough. And so I think, it's helped me grow. Radio is tough. You got to have some thick skin to be in that radio game. You got to have some humility about you, because you're the ish, but sometimes it's just finances, right? It comes down to sales. This comes down to, can they keep you? Can they afford to keep you? It's not personal at all. It's just like, it really is business. And so I think it's a lot of, conversations in the mirror. If you have not wanted to quit radio or quit because of radio at some point, I don't know that you truly got that grind, right? Like if you haven't been like, you know what? I don't know if this is for me, that 9 to 5 looking better and better, but it's worth it. It builds character. I'll say that.
No, it absolutely does. And I think, like you said, when you really start from the ground up, because I've done everything. So like when you really start from the ground up, I think you learn a lot more about how the ins and outs of things work, and you appreciate it more.
Yeah, I commend you for doing TV, because I have never wanted to venture in that like foreign land. It's like definitely not my lane. But everyone's like, "Oh, you should do TV." I'm like, my faces are too present. Like, I'm that friend who has to fix her face all the time. You're gonna know
secrets. We gonna know
secret. My face tells on me, and I'm like, I cannot do TV, because if my co-host or like someone I don't like, let's say, says something crazy, my face is gonna say everything, and they're like, cut to Candace, cut from Candace, cut from Candace.
Nah, I've been there. I mean, honestly, I think you should give it a shot. You got the camera presence, you got the light, the skin going.
Okay,
you know what I'm saying.
I drink water and mind my business, but it could happen for me. Brandon, speak that. Okay, it could happen for me.
Hey, we will talk about it.
There we go.
I know, like in this field, not only being a woman, but I love your pen tweet too, being a Black woman in this industry, or just a Black person in general. Just from you going from swimming, because that's not exactly a sport that we're known to dominate or frequent a whole lot. So I know that you were probably stood out back then too. Kind of take us through how that kind of prepared you for this media world now too.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, if you really just sit back and think about it, how many Black women sports radio hosts do you know? Like sports radio. We're not talking about people on TV. We're not talking about writers, like sports radio hosts. And I think, it's problem of itself from just like a Black anchor radio podcast, all the things. But as a Black woman, it's like, why have we not been able to carve our space? Like there are plenty. There are women who are super talented behind the mic. They just never been given the opportunity. And I think it's so unfortunate, because we have so much to say and so many intellectual things to say. I think helped me because swimming, like I've been the only one. I know what it's like to be the only one. I hate that I'm the only one. And I hate it more so because I know the talent that exists. It just hasn't been tapped into. Like the reason we don't thrive in the swimming space is because we don't have a lot of access, or we have some generational trauma from wanting to learn how to swim to begin with, because we weren't provided, opportunities to swim. So it's not because we're not good at it. It's not because we're inherently like impossible for us to learn how to put our arms top of each other and get it going. Right. It's just like we weren't given the opportunity to do so. So I think there's so many misnomers about, being in radio, being, a part of an athletic sport that, we don't necessarily see ourselves in. It's just, we're still telling our stories. Like there's like, hidden figures. There's so many people that just weren't given the opportunity, or so few far between. They're probably was really great at it, but we're told like, oh, well, we don't do that. So that's why we did it. Or we're not supposed to be on radio. That's why we don't. And it's just so disheartening, because if we just were given the lane and the like opportunity and the platforms to really express ourselves, I think it's also because they know we would kill it,
Oh, no doubt. Like we kill everything else. You already know. So have you connected with other Black women in radio? Like, is there like a network out there like that for y'all?
There's a women in radio platform. There are a couple women who just do radio in general. I know one, her name is Rita. I can't think of her last name. I follow her on Twitter. She covers Baltimore Ravens. I live in Baltimore, and she is just like the funniest thing on Twitter. Like she's an NFL Chick on Twitter. If you have not found her, please go follow her. She's on radio out here in the Maryland area, and she's incredible. And just being someone when she followed me back, I was fangirling, right? Like it's just there's so few of us that I was like, the fact that she even wants to like have rapport with me, goodbye my book. And I think she's probably the only one that comes to mind from radio standpoint. But again, that's on me to do my research and figure it out, because I would love to create a Black Women in Sports network of just people who are radio driven. You know, TV is cool, writing is great, but like that radio thing, it's just like when you're behind that mic, it's a different feeling.
No, absolutely. And I like you said, I love the freedom of like podcasting and radio, because TV is so scripted. You're reading, you're writing off you're reading off the teleprompter. It's so time consumed. Like you get 5 minutes, like you can't go over it. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
So for you navigating this radio, what advice would you give other people that are trying to navigate these waters?
You know, radio is so crazy right now, because when you look at platforms like ESPN, who are really chopping their radio platforms and not, necessarily having the local radio stations or affiliates, they're pretty much just streaming their national shows. So it's really tough to get into. I mean, it's like TV. It's an industry that is like cutthroat. It's the best of the best, small market, very low wages. You gotta love this thing. Like, and at this point, you're almost in a better avenue of creating your own stuff, like monetizing yourself on YouTube or being a social influencer, things like that, where people can find you and want to attach you to their bigger brands just because of the way it's set up from a revenue standpoint. Like everyone's looking to give you some ad space, or if you show you can do that for yourself, like even being a part of Locked On Podcast Network, and we can, bring in our own ad money and all that fun stuff. Like I think that helps propel you, but it's a grind. I think my biggest advice is like, it is not for the faint of heart, right? I haven't gotten to where I am because I've just been pretty and happen to know the right people. Like I've had to hustle, because it's just not enough to be cute. Like you have to have some substance behind it. Yep. And the work ethic it speaks for itself, right? And then sometimes the work ethic is insane and it's just not your season. And I think that's hard pill, right? I think having to overcome feeling like you have everything to offer and it's just not your time, or the avenue's not there, the opportunity's not there, and still wanting to pursue it. I think that, separates the haves and the have-nots.
For sure. That's some free game right there. Seriously. Like, I remember my first gig, I was making like $8.25 an hour. Like, so
it's not sustainable. Like it's so crazy. Sometimes I go back to my comfort meals of like when I was an intern making $7.50, and I'm like, I ate rice and beans, I ate PBJs, and I'm like, but this is not sustainable, and this is struggle meals is not cute. Like I don't want this to be my lifestyle. Just because I love what I do, like there has to be this like fine tuning of being able to have some affordability to, people who are really talented.
No, absolutely. I think it's so crazy too. Like just the setup. It's like, if you don't know anybody, you got to move across the world to get like I went from North Carolina to North Dakota. So that first winter.
Oh gosh, how is North Dakota? What is that like? Oh God, flipping it on you. What is North Dakota like? I've been to damn near all the states, Utah, Arizona, all the things, but South Dakota, North Dakota, I don't know if I can make that work.
I'm gonna just say you don't really have a reason to go there. I won't be returning. I'm in New York now.
Okay.
I met some great people.
Yeah.
And I think when you move away from home, your hometown, you really get a grasp and a different perspective on life. Like when it's just you and the elements, and it's like you said, you really find out if you really love what you do and if you built for it.
Absolutely. You learn to enjoy your own company as well. Like when you have to make those big moves, like I'm in Baltimore by myself, grinding it out here at Under Armour. And I'm just like, I've learned to love my own company, whether it's traveling, being on news, like all the things. Like you got to learn to just really enjoy yourself, what you're doing, and figuring it like, and knowing that it's a seed. Like this is not forever. This is not always. Like you knew you weren't going to be in North Dakota for the rest of your life. Like you knew that. You knew that was a stepping stone to where you had to be, and you have to be open and willing. Like in this industry right now, like that's the way it's set up. You have to be open and willing to kind of spread your horizons if the opportunities aren't where you are.
Oh, most definitely. And I know being in Baltimore, like I love the fact that you're covering a multitude of sports, because I've covered everything from football to cross country to pickleball. So
Yep.
like, I
Wow, yeah,
know.
pickleball is this is the new wave,
Hey,
and I'm trying to get there. I'm
hey,
trying.
hop on right now. I'm telling
Okay.
you. So for you just navigating sports out there, how do you feel like the coverage is for men's and women's sports? I know the women's tournament this year probably received the most attention that they have. And
Yeah.
I know Angel Reese is a name making waves out there, especially where you're at.
Yeah.
What were your takeaways from that?
Yeah, I think it's exciting, right? I think anytime that you get acknowledgement for something that's been happening, like you've been had dogs. Like there's a reason I didn't go to Tennessee because I didn't want to be like Candace Parker. Like I didn't want people to associate name and name. So like
Ah,
there've been incredible women doing this thing. It's like everyone's just now finally getting on board. I also think it's exciting from an ACC standpoint. Like women's basketball is arguably the best branch of revenue sport that the ACC has. So it was nice to see like Virginia Tech getting their nod and having teams like UNC get pretty far and all that stuff. So I think it was a good tournament, and I'm glad to see like the WNBA is getting built upon. Like honestly, these guys, these sweeps are helping. Like gentlemen sweep for the Boston Celtics, but I think these sweeps are helping to be like, all right, we got a little break here. WNBA games, right? So I think it's an opportunity for the language to change. Like, oh, there's no basketball till Tuesday. Well, actually, there is basketball. Like, go check out the Connecticut Sun. Go check out, the Washington Mystics. I think it's a very good opportunity just to learn and grow and keep that eye, especially like growing up. I didn't have Instagram. I didn't have Twitter. Like, I was just vibes, taking pictures on Polaroid. Like I had a camera and a phone. So I think this is the way our world is now. It's just easier to consume it.
Absolutely. How have you seen NIL impact? Because I know that probably could have helped you out back in college too. Like, how have you seen that lift up the
Brandon,
women's game?
I have just like I don't want to be that old. Like how there's people who you have loans. And you're like, well, I paid off my loan, so like I
Yeah.
want you to have to suffer and pay loans too.
Oh
And like
yeah.
it's like seeing NIL. It's like, girl, don't you know I would have been raking it up, okay?
Man.
Off the strength alone of shampoo products, conditioner, having towels, swimsuits that fit my fanny, like having just swim lessons.
Why are we not seeing swimmers killing the game right now? I feel like
Y'all
that's
are
great.
asleep. And I'm like, being an African American swimmer, like I would have had the game on lock. Like that it makes me sick that I didn't think about this in 2012. Like, where were y'all? Why didn't y'all get up to this NIL speed? Why were y'all trying to force us to be amateur so bad? And I think with NIL though, like it really is for the taking. If you are a woman athlete who understands her brand and understands her marketing influence, you really can take to the next level. Like I'm so glad to see Angel Reese get a part of Miele Organics, like get a part of the things that we're doing, eyelashes, makeup, stuff that you use in your day to day. Just allow for it to be, in a place that ultimately benefits you. I look back and I say, Lord, I mean, I was in a time when the year after I graduated, that was when that boy got on TV and said he's hungry at the NCAA tournament. I'll never forget it. You know who I'm talking about. I can see his face, the big lip, all that. He said, I'm hungry, I'm starving. Next year they got snacks. I was like so pissed. And I was like, they get food. Like they don't have to ration. They don't have to eat pasta and vibes. Like, it's just, it makes you appreciate what it is. But I also want it to get better. Like, this is what I wish I had had. And so I'm not like looking at it from a negative standpoint, but you damn sure better capitalize on this standpoint.
No, most definitely. And it's dope to see, like, yeah, some of these women and men are millionaires. Like, it's crazy to see. I know, like, with the NIL, the transfer portal's been crazy too. And something I wanted to ask you about specifically being in the ACC that caught my eye was the leading scorer for NC State's women's team, Diamond Johnson, heading to a HBCU. Were you surprised? What was your initial reaction to that?
I think what's so great about transfer portal now is that you don't have to sit out a year and you can go wherever you're celebrated. And I think for her, like going where she feels celebrated is so essential. I think the narrative of HBCUs is changing, which I'm really happy about and proud of, because education is, to me, Black excellence, Black education, however you get it, I'm all for it. HBCUs, PWIs, what have you. But I think for just being comfortable and wanting to excel in a way that makes her thrive as a human and also, add on athlete. I mean, I think that's, you can't ask for a better situation for her. I know she's going to be successful. As someone who hosts a CIAA tournament, it's always just really rewarding, very much a family reunion vibe. And just, you can just tell there's a different level of pour into when it comes to HBCU athletics. So I really hope that she gets that, whatever she felt like she was missing at NC State.
I know y'all got it up there. My folks back in North Carolina is not happy about that CIAA.
Child, don't get us started on Baltimore and the CIAA. We ain't got it, but hey, they be coming. Now that's the thing.
Okay.
They support and they come in droves and they are faithful. I think you think about teams like Lincoln, you think about teams like Virginia State and Virginia Union. They're allowing them to be a little bit closer, and travel a little bit less. But I mean, Winston-Salem State, they be coming up there now. They in there. You got Fayetteville State and all these really good teams. And so I think it's just a matter of trying to find the right venue that's going to allow for the most exposure, because you can have it in Charlotte, but then you throw all the parties and then it just misses out on what the purpose is, right? It misses out on the games, the students, all that support. So I just got to find that right medium. Whether I personally think it should be in Raleigh. Growing up, it was in Raleigh for me. I think that's a great venue. It's big enough, but it's not also a city where you get lost in what the moment's really about.
Facts. I mean, I don't know if everybody down there would be thrilled, but I'm gonna let you live. How are they embracing it in Baltimore though? Like the community, or like are they promoting it? Like, is it a thing?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the mayor comes. We got the first Black mayor. They had the first Black governor for Maryland come this year, and it's just been really nice. Commissioner, she is like to me a godsend in terms of just wanting to keep CIAA top of mind and really celebrate what is HBCUs. And I think it's just important, no matter where it is, no matter the location, like remember the purpose, right? And I think she's done an excellent job of making sure that is known.
Most definitely. And I know you mentioned you were from Raleigh. I'm from Winston-Salem myself. Okay. So, triad, actually. But I know NC State, like just the whole triangle, and then Wake Forest and Winston. Like, I love that y'all's breakdown. I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about the football side of things, because it was really in depth, and like y'all are giving some really good information. So we can definitely.
I appreciate that, because sometimes we be shooting from the hip, and we do our homework. I ain't gonna hold you, but sometimes it's nice to hear this. I really appreciate that, because we be working hard. Okay.
Most definitely. Oh man, I will definitely be subscribing after this. I promise. I see it's crazy, because like the YouTube grind is so different. Like you'll have a creator and you'll watch every video they have and still won't be subscribed to them.
Well, it's also yes, and it's also crazy that a kid could be opening toys and he has 2 million subscribers.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. So it's like it's really just what your niche is. It is really the World Wide Web. Web? You know what I'm talking about. Okay?
Yeah, the internet.
There it is. I'm pretty. It's one of those situations where like you can just find any and everything and whatever suits your fancy. And we're not the biggest brand by any means, but we have some really good, loyal people. And with our fandom, you got your NC State people, Kenton, NC State grad, Carolina grad. You got your Florida States and your Miami people who are insufferable, who will give you all the feedback, good, bad, or ugly. And it's just hilarious, because it's never enough, which makes it funny and fun, because you talk about Syracuse like a dirty dog that hates you. You talk about Virginia Tech, you give a little bit of critique, and it's just downhill from there. But a new day, a new team, somebody's in their feelings, but all in all, they come back. Love you or hate you, they be coming back. And let me see if they've been nicer today. Luckily we have a daily show that allows for that.
Man, that's awesome. Though it's about I think that slow grind is magnificent, because you build that steady, loyal audience that's gonna stick with you. So just going into it a little bit, what are your thoughts on the Big Four in North Carolina? I know Drake May, big storylines there. Yeah. So I watched him, scouted him in high school. Hell of a basketball player too, as I'm sure y'all know.
Yeah.
You got NC State. Sam Hartman used his 10 years of eligibility. He's still out of the Wake Forest at Notre Dame. What are some of the things that you guys are looking at in North Carolina schools?
Yeah, I think Wake Forest is definitely in a rebuild year. They're trying to figure themselves out. How Mitch Griffiths, there it is. How he's going to try and replace a 7-year vet like Sam Hartman is certainly difficult, right? And I think that defense has to figure it out. Like, they have been the Achilles heel for the Demon Deacons for quite some time. I think NC State's got Brendan Armstrong, who came from Virginia. He transferred. He has his offensive coordinator in Robert Anae. And the problem will be for NC State is how long do you keep Brennan if he's not seeing success? Because you saw a little bit of flash from MJ Morris, who is a young Black quarterback out of there who had to be serviceable and kind of come in when Devin Leary went down. So it'll be interesting to see from that vantage point. But I mean, Peyton Wilson returning for them is excellent. NC State has now set this sort of 8 wins or more standard
Yeah.
for themselves, which is nice, especially for a program that, it's really never been the flashiest, but,
Right. They don't get the blue
hardworking
chip guy. They get the hardworking lunch pail guys.
guys who are going to stay 2 or 3 years and really develop. North Carolina, Drake May is going to be Drake May. We hope to not see a sophomore slump. I really hope that now that we have film on him, guys aren't going to like figure him out and he's somehow not going to be as flashy. But in the same vein, like North Carolina's offense can be great, but if that defense don't figure it out, what are we talking about?
Giving up 50 points a game, Danny.
What are we talking about? I'm like,
No.
I'm not upset that Dre Bly had to go about his way, but it was time. It was time. And Kenton actually is a Detroit Lions fan, and so he was crying and throwing up when he saw that Dre is now the cornerbacks coach for the Detroit Lions. So he had to pour one out for that situation. But I think Carolina will always be fine. I don't know how long Mac Brown stays. I think you start looking like, maybe it might be a retirement for you if we don't see like a nine win season. Especially towards they're already crying about the NC State, the Clemson lineup they have towards the end, and Duke. So Mac Brown is already in his feels. And then I'm a Duke girl, Duke football girl, which everyone on the show gets a little bit confused. But
I don't know too many of y'all, so I'm happy you repping.
Last year I won $300 because I bet that they were going to win 6 games, and they won more. So I'm just saying, if you want to ride that train,
okay,
come on, Coach Elko. Duke was always good. They just needed a better coach. I love Coach Cutcliffe, but he stayed past his time, right? And I think sometimes coaches who are so used to something, used to a rhythm about, being a head coach, don't know when to let it go. And I think when Mike Elko came, he already had a good crop of guys who, were really good. I think Dwayne Carter, what's my boy's name? Mr. Monk. And you also have Riley Leonard, the quarterback, who is pretty consistent. So I'm excited to see how Riley and Drake sort of battle it out with Battle of the Blues.
I know Dez does a lot with East Forsyth High School out here in Winston. They got the freshman Quayshawn Brown. So I know he'll be keeping his eye on him at Duke.
Yep.
For you, I think like all we've been hearing is Drake May, Caleb Williams. What has to happen for Drake May to win a Heisman? Like, is it lined up? I know he lost Josh Downs. Like, can this happen? What needs to happen for this to happen?
Right. I think Drake is going to have to, it's not even about Drake, it's about North Carolina, right? Because North Carolina is not viewed as your top-notch football program or school. They're going to have one hell of a year. They're going to have to beat teams like Clemson. They're going to have to, guaranteed wins against NC State and Duke. Like, you're going to have to run the table. And then beyond that, then you start having yourself a conversation about Drake, college football playoffs, and all the like. But you have to at least get into the ACC championship, in my opinion.
Give us your spiciest take before we let you go. The dark horse. What's the one that you sitting on that people are riding you on about?
That's so crazy. Okay, I have so many hot takes, but Duke, I think, is a top 5 team. I think they obviously could be in the conversation when it comes to be finishing first in the ACC. I think Florida State is going to beat Clemson and ultimately be the top 2 teams. There's no divisions in the ACC this year, which has been a nice change. There's no Atlantic teams crying about how they have to play, their gambit, and coastal teams feeling like they're coasting to a championship. So I think that is going to come down to Clemson and Florida State. However, the darkest horse will be Miami. I want to believe. I really do. Yeah. Like I've been trying to be like, okay, swagger, swag you, Miami, all the vibes. Nice. But you have all the puzzle pieces, but why is it not sticking? Like Mike Norvell was able to figure it out. Maybe Miami this year can figure it out.
Man, they got the boosters down there spending the money. They gotta have something happening.
NIL for days. Tyler Van Dyke is arguably top 3. Like I would go Drake May, Jordan Travis, Tyler Van Dyke in terms of quarterbacks. I think that Cade Klubnik is cool, but I'm not sure if I'm bought in. And I also don't like how they kind of, put DJU to the side when that whole thing kind of transpired. But I think Tyler Van Dyke, he's the type of guy that he's going to talk that junk and he's going to back it up. And I think that's important, especially for a place like Miami.
He's got the experience.
Yeah.
100%. Well, Candace, I appreciate you hopping on. Let them know where they can follow you at and follow your journey. Plug away right now and let them know where to get at you at.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. I go on a lot of podcasts, and this has probably been the smoothest and most comfortable. So I really appreciate the time that I have been here. Locked On ACC podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are available wherever you listen in the audio space. We're on YouTube. Just type in Locked On ACC. You can see our lovely faces every single day for up to 30 minutes. And you download, subscribe, leave all the reviews. It really does help us. So I really appreciate you allowing me this space, and I look forward to connecting and coming back.
Oh yeah, most definitely lock you
Yeah.
in. That's a wrap for us. For all the latest and the greatest, this has been Live with Brandon Blakney. I'm your host, and we are out.